Hey everyone, it's Jen with Spirited Saturdays, and this week we're talking about eating disorders and bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder is generally characterized by extreme mood swings. For example, well, it used to be called manic depression, and now it's called bipolar because manic depression got kind of a bad rap. People kind of associated it, people kind of gave it a poor stereotype, and so it's sort of like a little more politically correct these days to say bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder would be characterized by extreme shifts in mood, swings in mood that are either depressed, so, low energy, kind of flat, maybe, like a catatonic state, kind of like really immobilized with depression. Or it could be, and then going from that, or coming to that from a state of mania, which is a high mood swing, a high energy state, or a frenetic kind of energy state, but generally like a very it could be felt as happy, it could be felt as productive, but it's a state of being on, but to the extreme, like so much that you can kind of lose inhibition and become impulsive, because you might feel invincible, you might feel like not subject to certain laws of nature or certain consequences. So yeah, that kind of runs a spectrum. So depression, obviously, low down, flat, whatever that might mean for you. Losing hope and isolation, whatever that could mean. Mania would be like really go, go, go and unable to come down, except when they do come down, they crash into depression, which can make the depression then seem even worse than if it were felt by itself. So, yeah, there's a kind of, there is a spectrum of bipolar disorder. It's not just extreme lows and extreme highs. There are other ways to experience it. Kind of, there's hypomania, which is there's bipolar 2, which is hypomania, which is like you can get really happy, you can get really on, but everything is going really fast. But you don't cross over into like the really disorganized or the really frenetic or potentially psychotic even piece of, that would describe mania. So there are risks involved in letting yourself become or start to become manic, because often mania is at first felt as good. It's felt as a good thing. People feel that they're more productive when they're manic. They feel that they're happy. Why would they not want to be happy? Why would they try to shut that off? But the problem is that if it doesn't get shut off, it either escalates into severe mania or it crashes into depression. So, which is bound to happen at some point because of the lack of sleep, of the constant exertion of energy. Something is bound, you cannot maintain that state. Often people look back and think they were productive or think they did something really on point, and when they were in a manic state or even a hypomanic state, and they look back at it and they realize that it didn't make any sense, or other people read it and they realize that, and they don't see the sense in it. So this, obviously I've known a couple of people who have, or several people actually, who have had bipolar disorder and eating disorders, and basically a lot of those symptoms overlap, and like any other mental disorder, like we talked about schizophrenia, you can really enter into a dangerous area if you let one of the two get too out of control, because it can easily trigger the other one, like say, you know, you aren't getting a lot of sleep, that could trigger, well, if you're not getting a lot of sleep because of your eating disorder, if you're starving, you know, and you're not sleeping because your body can't sleep, then it can trigger a bout of, or an episode of mania, because mania is often induced by lack of sleep. But then it, in and of itself, it makes for even less sleep, because that is a characteristic of mania. So, you know, it's really easy to go downhill when you have both an eating disorder and bipolar disorder. You know, I've known people, or I've read about people who are writers, who are artists or musicians, and they can get so much done when they're in a manic state. But often what happens is they look back at it and it doesn't make sense, or or it did make sense and they did feel really productive, but then they crash and they go through a period of emptiness, of hopelessness, of falling. That's what, as in my experience, with people that I've known or people that I've seen or read about, that's what generally tends to happen. You can't sustain that. So, you know, I think it's pretty common to have mood disorders and eating disorders. I don't know exactly about bipolar. I would imagine, well, the people that I've known who've been bipolar have mostly been anorexic, which I can understand. It's that your body is like working off of adrenaline. Often when you're in a manic state, you feel like you don't need food, because you're somehow, there is that element of feeling superhuman in both mania and anorexia. So that makes sense. There is that like buzz that you can have, that you feel can sustain you, that you know, don't want to let go of. So, you know, that all makes sense. With bulimia, with binge eating, I tend to think of that more with depression, because the depressive part of bipolar, you know, you really are kind of appeasing it's like you're letting your sadness and you're letting your hopelessness just hold you, just cocoon you, and you're just sinking into it. And that's often what it's felt like with me with bulimia, and depression. And I'm not bipolar, although I think about 10 years ago I think I was wrongly diagnosed with bipolar 2. One doctor diagnosed me with it, but I'd only known her for 2 weeks, and it was never talked about again in my treatment, and my mood stabilizer didn't even really work for me. So the only medication that I've been on has been antidepressants, and that's always worked for me. I'm not on any medication right now, but if I were to ever go on any again, it would be an antidepressant. Yeah, so I don't really understand. But I do for sure understand the high and the buzz that happens when I'm creating music and playing and doing all that. And that is not an unhealthy high. That is a healthy one. But to the extent that I can understand what it's like to be on and go and not want to like stop, that, you know, if you like invert that and you think of it like with an eating disorder, that can be very much akin to like wanting to just exert all your energy and not, you know, and just not care about anything else, because you have like a single-minded goal and a single focus, and it's taking so much energy, and it's just like a constant buzz. So and often, I mean, even though I'm not diagnosed as bipolar, what happens after sometimes I'm really into something is I tend to get depressed. So, you know, that is something that I struggle with. I struggle with depression. So sometimes being really excited about something, even though I'm not manic, can trigger depression to come soon thereafter. And I do have to be on guard about that, because then the depression can lead to symptoms. It can lead to behaviors. So for sure, I mean, there's that, you know, how am I dealing with the hopelessness? Well, the defaults, you know, I have to be careful, is the eating disorder. So yeah, I mean, I would say that if you do have both bipolar disorder and an eating disorder, make sure that if you're supposed to be on medication, you know, you follow that to the letter. Going off medication when you have that kind of illness, just as depression and just as schizophrenia, if you're supposed to be on medication, if that's what's working for you, then it's so important that you stick to it and that you just don't veer off from it. You know, try your best not to skip doses. Even one skip dose can make a huge difference in the way you feel, and that can spiral so fast. So it's really important to stay on top of that. I know, like, they say, like when somebody goes into treatment for maybe like 2 different things, there's always that one that has to take priority. And I think that the mood disorder, if that came, especially, that's the other thing, if it came before the eating disorder, then that for sure, you know, needs to be stabilized. And then you can work on, and as long as you're getting fed, as long as you're getting your nutrients, but you, at the same time, but you need to stabilize the mental, the bipolar. That's what I think. I think that has to be a priority. And you know, and sometimes eating disorders do come before mood disorders. They do. They can cause a shift in the brain, but then sometimes you have to wonder if the mood disorder has been there all along. It's just been dormant and, you know, not triggered by anything. And maybe if, you know, maybe the eating disorder might have caused it to surface, you know. So it's hard to tell sometimes. That would be an individual thing that you'd have to figure out with your therapist or your doctor. Which one really came first? What's the or, you know, which is the problem that was with you for much longer, or, you know, or the one that got triggered by the other. Because once you enter into that, they play off of each other, so it can be really dangerous. So you try to separate it a little bit, see what you're dealing with, and then, you know, just know that for each disorder, there is no shame involved. Know that you're not alone. Understand that it's just as important to catch the mania as it is to catch the depression. Just as with an eating disorder, I know certain pieces of an eating disorder can seem favorable, you know, more favorable than others. Like, for example, some people might see restriction as the favorable piece of an eating disorder. They say, I just want to get rid of the binging. I'd rather, you know, as long as I get rid of the binging, I'll be fine, you know. But that's not the way it works, because one feeds off of the other, and the goal really is recovery. If you make a statement like that, then you're not saying that you want to recover, obviously, and so it's coming from a different place. So just as that, you know, just as, you know, I just want to get rid of the bulimia, I just want to get rid of, as long as I can get rid of the binging or the binging and purging, but I'll hold on to the anorexia, I'll hold on to the restricting. It's just like saying, oh, well, with bipolar, I just want to get rid of the depression, or I just want to get rid of the really psychotic mania, but I'll hold on to that, like, little bit of, like, buzz mania. That, be very careful about, you know, when you make statements like that, or you have inclinations to do that. You can't just manage that. You can't hold on to a little piece of it. So, yeah, medication, you know, talking to people, understanding that you can have a whole healthy persona, you can have a healthy self and not need any of these things, and you don't have to be depressed. You don't have to look to depression as an inevitable consequence of feeling happy, and happiness does not have to come in the form of mania or hypomania. It doesn't. Yeah, so if there's anything else going on for you, talk to your therapist, talk to your doctor, and take care.